It's a very sunny day on the farm today, and along with the peaches, now we also have the apricots in full bloom. So right next to our pond is this variety which did not flower at all, which bore us no fruit whatsoever last year, and this variety is called the Caesar. This is a late blooming variety compared to the other varieties that we have on the farm, which meant that it was not exposed to the fluctuations in the weather. We had the frost, we had snow, we had all kinds of very inclement weather during the flowering season for the early flowering varieties, and those were the Perimaci, the Big Red, Hollycott, Wondercott. But this one, the Caesar variety, is somewhat late blooming variety. It had not bloomed then, but now as you can see, it's in full blossom, and all these white petals, they look really beautiful in the morning light. The next apricot that we have here is this one called the Playacot. If you look at these buds here, they have not yet opened up. They are what in a stage called the mid blossom stage. They have not really opened up. They have not really opened up. Not opened up. Such as this, the Playacot, are going to be the varieties that are going to be safe from any kind of fluctuations that we saw for the early blooming varieties. Now, but there's a catch. Even though this variety, the Playacot, and also there's another variety called the Fugu, which is a late blooming variety, which is a late harvest variety, which did not bloom when the frost was here, though they were safe because they did not bloom early, because they are late blooming varieties, but they are going to be exposed to the monsoon because they're going to be harvested post monsoon. This variety we are going to harvest maybe towards the end of July. Monsoon hits our part of the world towards the 20th of June, and there is incessant rain, and because of that, stone fruits like the apricots are susceptible to skin cracking, and when the skin cracks, then your fruit is destroyed. So we always look forward to early fruiting varieties, varieties that we can harvest before the monsoon, before the rains, because the rains, apart from the cracking of the skin, is also going to lead to a lot of funguses and viruses and diseases which can hit these late fruiting varieties. So there's a give and take. So the late blooming varieties like this one over here, the Playacot and the Fugo, are going to be safe from the frost, but they are going to be exposed to the full brunt of the monsoon, the rains, the cracking of the skin, and all kinds of diseases. So flowers on any tree, any fruit tree, they do not flower all at once. They all flower at different times. So for example, these flowers, they bloomed much before than flowers on this branch which are blooming now. And that's a good thing, because the bees, they get a constant source of pollen and nectar. It will get a steady supply of nectar and the pollen. And we have over here one variety which seems to be still in what is called the pink bud stage. This is not even semi-bloom. These are buds which have not opened up at all. This variety is the variety that I was talking about. It's called the Fugo. This is the variety that we have on the farm, which is a variety that we're going to harvest towards maybe end of July or even August, because this has not blossomed. This is a late blooming variety, so it's going to be also the late harvest variety. So it has obviously escaped all the frosts, the snow and blizzards and the fluctuations in the weather that we had, but this is going to get the full brunt of the monsoon, because this is going to be harvested maybe towards the end of July or the 1st of August onwards. So this is the first year of this particular variety is blooming, because last year it hardly had any kind of flowers or fruit on it, and this year it looks very promising. The only problem that we have with these late blooming, late harvest varieties is that they are going to be susceptible to the diseases that the monsoons, the rains are going to bring, and it's going to be susceptible to skin cracking. So Fugo, along with the Plycot, is a late harvest variety that we have on the farm. It's always a good idea to have different varieties which harvest at different times of the year, which flower at different times of the year. There are multiple advantages to that. One is that you're going to extend your harvest period. If you had only one variety, they would bloom at the same time and you would have to harvest them all at the same time. Now, for example, we have an apricot over here, which is the earliest harvest variety that we have on the farm, called Prissy apricot, and followed by the Wondercott or the Hollycott or Perimasi. All these varieties are early harvest varieties, which we are going to start harvesting from the 1st of June, which means that starting from June to going on till the end of July and mid-August, we are going to have a steady supply of apricots because they are going to be ready at different times of the year. Its neighbor over here is a variety called the Bella Dumella. Now, this is a very fancy name for an apricot, and this year we have seen the first flowering from this variety. I was not really happy last year because it did not flower, it did not fruit, and I was contemplating top grafting it with a different variety that was doing better than this variety, but thankfully this has shown some promise and we can see all these flowers in bloom. So this is the Bella Dumella in full blossom now. Now its neighbor is the plum, and the plum here is I think it's the black splendor. This is also in full bloom, but not so much the cherries. Cherries again, they're still sleeping. They have not come out of the winter dormancy yet. And neither have the pears. This is a very small pear plant, still dormant. And this is the nectarine. Nectarine, like I said in the previous video, is nothing but a peach without the fuzz. This nectarine, called the stark red, is also opening up. It's almost going to be in full bloom in a couple of days. This nectarine does not bloom before the peach. The peach blooms, our local peach blooms much before the apricots and the nectarines. And here we have the early harvest variety of apricot called the Prissy apricot, and we harvested a lot of fruit from this. I was very happy with the production that we got from this apricot variety. Because it bloomed early, these flower petals, compared to the other varieties that are blooming now, they have almost fallen, and in a couple of days we should know whether the fruit has set or not. Fruit setting obviously will depend on a lot of factors. For example, what kind of pollination it has had, and also definitely the weather. And this, because it was an early bloom variety, was exposed to the early frost. It was also exposed to the snow and a lot of rain. I also should mention over here that the quality of pollination really matters. Most of the varieties of apricots are self-fertile, which means that these flowers do not require another tree to fertilize it. As I explained in my video on the peach blossom, is that because they are self-fertile, flowers from this tree, they can fertilize each other. Even the single flower can fertilize itself. So they don't necessarily require another variety of apricots to fertilize it. Most of the apricots are like that, but not all. Hollycott, for that matter, is not a self-fertile apricot. This one is, but it is going to benefit if it has another variety next to it. Even the self-fertile varieties, they benefit from cross-pollination, because cross-pollination brings in some other genetic trait which is going to reflect in the quality of the fruit that is going to be produced. So just a couple of days more before we know what kind of fruit setting has happened on this apricot tree. This is the Prissy apricot, and we still have some blooms which are sprouting on it. Like I said, fruit trees, they do not bloom all at once. Some of the petals bloom much before, some later, and that is good, because now if that happens, then obviously some of the blooms are not going to be exposed to the frost. Now, as you can see, these flowers have the petals almost about to drop, but this is a new flower and it has just blossomed. So this was the Prissy apricot, the early harvest variety, and we are going to harvest this in the first week of June. Now, not very far from the Prissy apricot, we have this variety over here. which almost bloomed at the same time as the Prissy apricot, and this one is the Wondercott. And we are also going to harvest it almost at the same time. First week maybe the Prissy apricot is going to get ready, and then the second week the Wondercott. Early harvest variety. It's going to be safe from the monsoon, but not safe from the late spring frosts. The flowers on it, as you can see, some of them are blooming. Like I said, not all flowers bloom at once, and thank goodness for that, because then they can be safe from the late spring frosts. And some of them, like over here, these ones, their petals have almost dropped, and in a couple of days we will know whether these flowers have fertilized or not. So this was the Wondercott. And then of course we have this peach tree over here. We have documented this very extensively. This saw the worst of the frost. And then we have next to it the plum tree, which is now in full blossom as well. But its neighbor is still in a pink bud stage, and this of course is Fugo, the late harvest variety. The buds are still in what is called the pink bud stage. They have not opened up, but if we have this kind of sunlight, then they're going to open up sooner. So by the time we finish off harvesting the early harvest varieties like the Prissy apricot or the Hollycott or the Wondercott, this is going to get ready. So we'll have an extended period of harvest of the apricots because they have different harvest times. The thing about the Fugo to remember is that Fugo, unlike the Prissy apricot or the Wonder apricot that we saw before, is not self-fertile, which means this will need pollen from a different apricot for the fertilization of its flowers. So not all apricots are self-fertile like the peaches. All peach varieties are self-fertile, but not all apricot varieties are self-fertile. There's another variety that we're going to go to called the Hollycott that is also not going to be self-fertile. That also requires pollen from another flower of another variety to fertilize it. Potential problem I can see with a variety like this which has not blossomed while all the other varieties have blossomed is that by the time it flowers, the other varieties, the early flowering varieties might not have any flowers on them to help in the cross pollination of this variety called Fugo. But like I said, like I showed you, not all flowers on an apricot tree bloom at the same time. So the late bloomers of the other variety, like for example the Wondercott which is close by, should be able to help fertilize this variety called Fugo, which needs cross pollination to fertilize its flowers. See, not yet blossomed. Whereas this variety over here, this one, the Wondercott, has blossomed because it's an early harvest variety, early blooming variety. It saw the worst of the frost, but this variety, the Fugo variety, the late harvest variety, is going to see the worst of the monsoons. And this apricot over here, blooming beautifully behind me, is the Permaculture. Permaculture, along with the Prissy apricot and the Wondercott, is an early harvest variety. I am going to be harvesting it maybe a week to 10 days after I am going to be harvesting Prissy apricot. Look at the beautiful shape of this tree. This has an open center, there is nothing in the center. This has the kind of formation that all apricot trees should, which means that they're going to get the full brunt of the sun. All branches are going to get the sun. All the fruits on the branches are going to get the sun. There is going to be a good circulation of air because there's nothing in the center. And all these fruits are going to be accessible to me because they are bending at an angle. And then we have also flowering a variety which did not produce anything at all last year, or maybe produced very little. So obviously we don't remember because the production might have been very less. This one is the Delcicot. Then of course we have the big red. Now this variety has been blooming since the past almost 2 weeks, and some of the flowers, like I said, they are late bloomers, which is a good thing for varieties that need cross pollination. So most of the varieties we have on the farm are self fertile except two, Fugo and Hollycott. This neighbor here is a variety, a very big, very large, a very nicely shaped apricot tree called the, this one is the pink cod. Now the pink cod, I do not have information unfortunately on this, whether this is self-fertile or not, but because it has bloomed almost at the same time as its neighbor, the Permaculture, it's going to benefit from cross-pollination. The bloom times, remember, have to overlap. But look at the blossom on this tree, laden with flowers, and I'm going to come here maybe again in a week or so and show you the same flowers and show you whether these have set or not, and how do you find out whether they are set or not. Now I see this apricot over here not very far from the pink cod, which is in full blossom. All the buds seem to have blossomed, and this one is called the Permaculture again, the Permaculture, the early harvest variety. I am looking for the hollycott and I want to find out whether it has a different variety close to it, or whether the bloom times of hollycott correspond, overlap with its neighboring varieties. Otherwise I will not expect too much of harvest from it. Now where is the hollycott? Now this is the other apricot that we have on the upper terrace that we are going to be harvesting from for the first time, and this one is called the hollycott. Now this is that variety that we are looking for. This, along with fugu, is a self-sterile variety, not self-fertile. This is not a variety which is going to be able to fertilize its own flowers. The flowers from this apricot are not going to be able to fertilize each other. It will require pollen from another variety of apricot to fertilize its flowers. But unlike the fugu, where the buds have not yet opened up, where the buds are still in what is called a swollen bud or a pink bud stage, these flowers, as you can see, have bloomed, and this has bloomed almost at the same time. The bloom time of this apricot tree, the hollycott, has corresponded with the bloom time of other varieties that we have on the farm, which means that this is going to benefit definitely from cross pollination. So this was the hollycott, and this is also an early harvest variety. This is going to be harvested almost at the same time as the wondercott. I think I've covered almost all varieties of apricots that we have on the farm. All of them were planted out in 2022, but this one, this apricot, was planted much before any other apricot variety. This one is the Bolero. This was planted out, I think, in 2020, if I'm not mistaken, 2 years before the other varieties were planted out. And this is on a border, and this is also a self-fertile variety, but it's going to benefit from the pollination of other varieties that we have on the farm. So this was the apricot blossom, and blooming along with our apricots are also the plums, the peaches and the nectarines, and our farm is full of these flowers. It's a magnet for all the bees. So you might have noticed we have all these different varieties of apricots on the farm, and all different species of fruit trees growing side by side next to each other, which means that we are going to come to the farm to pick them at different times. We are going to come and do some kind of foliar application if we need to at different times. We will do the pruning practice at different times, because we need to pay attention to them, not all at once, but one after the other. We will be able to pay attention to them a little bit more than we would if this was a kind of a monoculture of one kind of tree, one kind of species, which would require attention all at once, which would need to be harvested all at once, which would need to be pruned all at once. So this is one of the benefits that we have of growing this kind of a polyculture, this kind of a mishmash of different species together, different varieties together, in this kind of a permaculture setup that we have here on this high altitude permaculture farm in the Himalayas. This here, by the way, is the plum tree, and as you can see, it's in bloom, and we are also going to discuss the plum trees, the different varieties, the different pollination requirements, different varieties that you can grow, and a lot more in our next video.